And we're on. All right. Welcome back to NickTalks. So, today, first of all, hope everyone's having a good day. Thanks for tuning in. It is the 18th of January, 2022. And things are going good. We're climbing out of the pit a little bit over here. It's been a rough couple months, but we're doing it. We're living life still. So, today, I wanted to talk about the reality of parenthood. Now, I don't have kids, nor am I considering having children. I think that is an incredible responsibility and incredible burden if you do it too early and with not enough intention. But I think that considering the idea of being a parent really can help connect with your own parents, make peace with your parents, and just adults in general. Older individuals. I say adults like I'm 16 years old or something, but just people who have a longer walk of life than you. Because the big thing to realize is that, we're all walking through this journey at our own pace. And you really cannot compare your own life with that of anybody else, no matter how old you are. There are things that I have figured out completely that I'm way ahead of someone who's 40 years old. But there's things that someone at 40 has obviously way better figured out than I do. So the journeys are not the same either way. And no matter what age you are, there's always lessons to be learned. And so what kind of sums up the idea that for me personally helped me find peace with my family members and my parents is that parents are just kids having kids. Now, I've been hearing this a lot more recently, but it's something that I've been thinking about since I was for at least the last 6+ years, where, they're figuring things out at the exact same time. And if I think about, so I'm 22 now, and I think about my parents. My mom was 25 when she had me. That's 3 years from now, right? So, imagine myself 3 years older than I am today, and then bringing a new life onto this planet, and the responsibility that comes out with that. That's incredibly terrifying. Especially the more you think about it, the more terrifying it can be, because especially if it's accidental. If you plan to have a kid, I'm sure that it's a little bit, it's the same road, but at least you made the decision to go down that road. But sometimes that just falls in your lap, son. That's tough. And you got to figure it out on the fly. So, the big thing is just parents are going to make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to be what plagues you as a child could be your whole life. And so, both as a parent, you need to realize that, hey, I have to apply the best intentions and do the best job that I can. One, so that my kid doesn't have to deal with my issues through their whole life. And two, to help my child be the best and most functional member of society and leader of their own life that they can be. And as a child, realizing that, my parents made mistakes. They had a hard time. It's difficult to raise something as complex. It's not a houseplant, right? It's a complex human being with many aspects of personality and psychology that we don't even understand yet. and you're in charge, solely in charge of bringing that person into the world and making sure they don't, end up somewhere terrible or doing bad things or whatever. It's a tough task. That's like probably one of the toughest tasks that I could imagine. So, kind of thinking about that and realizing that, are there bad parents? Yes, of course. I'm not saying that everybody's just making mistakes, but there are some parents who, maybe if you think about their actions, you can see how their trauma from their childhood has bled through onto you, or maybe they just made the wrong call in a situation and it really caused you pain and is one of the biggest things that you're working against now. But that's part of life. That's how it goes, and you can't hold that grudge against them, because what would you have done in their position? When you got to think, when your kid, throws on that rated R movie and you got to decide right now, am I going to let them watch this? Is that okay? I don't know. When your kid says, I want to play football, and you think about all the kids that have concussions and brain damage, you got to think, well, I know football is a great exercise and good for brotherhood and it promotes social skills, but I also know the dangers, injury, brain injury, whatever. So you got to make those decisions right now. And that's the thing, is that you don't have years and years and years to plan out how you're going to do it unless you plan for your child. And even if then, you may not be able to think of everything that you're going to have to take into account. So you got to make these decisions while they're happening. So, that's just terrifying to me personally, and justifying for the parents. I mean, there's so many things that you would have to decide as a parent, just to put it in perspective, like sleepovers. I'm sure, I have friends that they weren't allowed to sleep over at their friends' houses until they were, 12, 14, 15, maybe even later. I personally was allowed very young, but put that into your own perspective. Imagine you bring this child to life, and you spend time raising it as a baby, and then you first of all, the big huge weight of having to take them to school, and you've raised them up until this point, and you got to just give them away. I mean, unless you're homeschooling, but traditionally people are taken to school, and that's like, just whoop, there's my kid, and you hope nothing bad happens and you're not there to watch it. That's crazy. But with sleepovers, that's even more so, because they're going to spend time at another person's house. Now, actually before recently, I didn't really think about this that often. And it's like, yeah, they're just hanging out with their friends, but there's also parents there, adults, and you don't know people. You don't know what they're capable of, or what they plan to do, or what they might do. And that's a lot of trust. That's a lot of trust to put your 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old son or daughter in the hands of another grown man or woman. Because you don't know what's going on inside that household, and it could be bad, it could be terrible, and you just have to trust that it's not. And that, I know you can say, well, yeah, get to know the parents before you let them stay over. Some of the most prolific serial killers in history were some of the nicest guys. So you just got to make a judgment call, and you have to be aware that that's something that can happen. Something, your kid could go over to somebody's house and never come back, or come back way worse than they went up there. The odds of that happening very low, but as a parent, you have to think about all these things, and it wouldn't be very difficult for your love of the child and fear of something happening to them lock their lives up a little bit. And that's understandable. So, if your parents maybe were very strict and didn't let you do anything, that's a lot of fear. I'm sure they were just afraid, or they love you too much to where there's no freedom there. And the opposite could be true as well. where you're just let loose and run amok and get to do whatever you want. So all of these things, it's much more difficult, I would imagine, than people give them credit for, them being parents. Because I can't personally, I'm generally pretty good at conducting thought experiments and taking them down to the deepest level that I can. But, that's in here. There's a big difference between what I can create in here and what parenting is actually like. I can get pretty close, I'm sure, but never going to be the same as the reality. And that has helped me find a lot of peace with my parents, because I didn't have a terrible childhood, but they definitely had issues, and they were very apparent, and they affected my life and my siblings' lives. But when you detach from the selfishness of this is happening to me, and you pay attention with love and empathy, then you can kind of see, like, man, these people, they're just kids. They're just kids. Of course, they're 35, 40 years old now, but they're just kids. They're just trying to figure life out just like I am. And I don't have the responsibility of making sure that one or more other human beings are going to make it in life as well. Imagine right now, I've had issues with jobs and income in the past, and that's me. That's just me. Imagine if I got some rugrats in my living room that are trying to eat, and I got to make sure they eat. That's a lot more stress. It's a lot more responsibility. So just, it helped me personally cut them some slack. And I think first you got to detach. You have to detach from, oh, well, they ruined my life. They did all this to me. Yes, of course. But suffering comes from pain. Pain breeds pain. And so their traumas are going to be yours if they haven't, done the work to fix them, which not everybody knows how to do, and not everyone has time to do. I think that we're kind of coming into a more spiritually awakening time where people are maybe doing more work on themselves, being more introspective, but that wasn't always the case. I'm not saying it's the case for the majority now. I'm just seeing it more than I have in older populations. But, sometimes people don't have a chance. Imagine, you talk to a lot of people that are older than 30 years old, and we'll talk about their childhoods with like 9 kids. They were just popping babies out at that point. By 13 years old, you had to leave the house and go get an apartment or something crazy. It's always these crazy stories. And imagine you have to figure out your own past trauma and heal from that while trying to be an adult as well. Like, if you never had a childhood, then you're just like, that's just stepping right in the boxing ring out of the womb. And it's just bop, 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 nonstop, knocked around. So you gotta cut them some slack a little bit, is what I'm saying. Something else that I wrote down here is kind of thinking about the broad path of life. That, this is kind of more hypothesis than, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm pretty confident on it. That, children are often referred to as pure souls. And that's, in my opinion, why you hear so many stories of children communicating with ghosts, if you believe that, spiritual entities, angels, whatever. There's a lot more stories of children having paranormal experiences than adults. Now, whether you believe in that or not, there were more reporting, whatever, that's not really important, but children are untainted by the world. That's a fact. We can just start from factual. They're untainted by the world. They haven't perceived anything negative yet. Maybe that hot stove, maybe that ball to the face, and, maybe the tennis racket to the knee. Who knows? Little things like that. But they've never seen lies. They've never seen deceit. They've never seen, stealing and violence and crime. They're unaware of the grand issues of the world and unaffected by them greatly. Obviously, some children are not as fortunate to grow up in such a sheltered environment, but for the most part, until shown otherwise, children will be that pure, innocent being. So, the path of life. You start pure and innocent. And then slowly that purity, that understanding that everything's going to be okay, fades and turns into whatever conditioning is put on you by your parents, by your surroundings, by your childhood events of your upbringing, everything like that slowly transforms you into the person that you are going to be in adolescence and young adulthood. And honestly, the rest is up to you, because some people, they have that conditioning until they die. That's a fact. I mean, I personally believe that everyone undoes their conditioning at some point. Some people, it just takes until they're, at their last moments and they realize what they could have done better. But it is my understanding that you're born as a pure being. You're conditioned by society, parenthood, everything else, starting probably 5 to 7, they say that 1 to 7 is your imprinting years. That's where all the conditioning, all that programming, they go in there and teach you what kind of person you're going to be. And then the rest of your life is undoing that program. And that's getting back to the roots of who you are, who your consciousness and your being are supposed to be, which is that pure, innocent being that you started out as. And that's a hard road to take. That's a tough road. And that's why, a lot of people don't manage to take it, because they can't fall away from their issues and their traumas and their psychological differences. But, that's what the human soul or consciousness is meant to do, is undo and unlearn, not necessarily unlearn, but relearn what it was like to be free and get past all the conditioning and the rules that are set on you by society. Because a lot of it is not as true as it may seem. For probably years of my childhood, I thought that if you ran the vacuum over its own cord, it would explode into a fiery inferno, because that's what I was told. It's not true. Obviously, I've ran over the vacuum cord 100,000 times now, but I've never caught my house on fire, so there you go. And that's one little thing. Imagine the deeper things that actually take root. That was easily proven otherwise, but imagine the things that don't get proven to be false until way later in life, or never, unless you think about it deeply. So, undoing that conditioning and becoming the most pure that you can be in adulthood. And then you have kids. Pure being, conditioned being, unconditioned being intentionally, giving life. And then the process starts all over again. Starts all over again, because depending on how well you have done with freeing yourself from your programming, that's how programmed your child will be. Plus, other variables. But, if I have things that I have not dealt with, they're 100%. There's nobody that's going to be affected more than that kid, because they didn't even experience what I experienced to get the trauma. And so I'm just giving it to them for free. Why would they even understand where that comes from? That's even harder to undo that programming, because it's secondhand. So it's really your responsibility as an individual to undo that conditioning. And that's where you got to cut your parents some slack, because once you start going down the road of learning about your family and your parents and yourself and your past and how it made you who you are and what transferred here and here and here, what events made you do this, what little personality traits came from what event in your past. That could be a big part of my personality that came from a 5-minute interaction with my mom or dad 10, 15 years ago. And I have to dig to find that. So I think that it's our responsibility as human beings to dig and dig and dig and dig and uncover why we are who we are so that we can be who we want and who is better. So that by the time that we bring more life into this world, we're not going to make the same mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. It's just the fact of the matter. It's nearly unavoidable, but we can try and do better. But that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I got to say about that. So just think that over, and maybe if you got a big grudge against family or parents, realize that the only thing that brings pain is pain. So that's issues that they haven't dealt with yet that are just bubbling up to the surface and you're having to deal with it. So who is really experiencing more damage? You or the person who actually had to deal with it? The second hand or the first hand? I don't know. But there's probably a lesson of forgiveness in there. And I think that it would heal a lot of relationships. It certainly has for me. And that works for, parents. This is a big lesson for parents and people older than you in life. But, this is just a lesson in empathy. Just putting yourself in the other person's shoes and realizing that them hurting you is really just someone hurting them, but a long time ago. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. We're still loose on these. I mean, I'm not going to edit them, so kind of long form, bear with me. Not that I don't enjoy not editing them, but, the schedule's still kind of loose as well, but we're rolling with it, rolling with the punches. I mean, my life is generally more busy than it has been in the past, so I don't exactly have the total freedom to make these videos, but I like to, and it gives me a reason to think about things that I don't necessarily think about in depth for very long. So that concludes episode 5. I hope everyone has a great day, great week, great life. Have fun doing the work, and I encourage you to do so. Nick out.